Hi, Charlene O'Hanlon here, Managing Editor at DevOps.com and DevOps TV. I'm at DevOps Enterprise Summit 2018 in Las Vegas and having some really interesting conversations so far. And I'm hoping that this conversation will be equally as interesting. To my left, I have Erica Morrison, and to Erica's left is Anders Wallgren. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really looking forward to what we're going to be talking about, which is technology for tech leaders. It's an interesting topic because it's not one that a lot of people talk about. I guess you think about the C-suite, and they're basically, as you said earlier, they're the ones driving the technology conversation. But are we seeing kind of a change up where it's coming from other parts of the company now?
Yeah, so I think traditionally you've seen purchasing decisions getting driven kind of from that top down, right, from like the CIO level. And I'm seeing a lot more grassroots engineers picking up technologies that are out there playing with an open source tool or something that they found at a conference, and a lot more driving from that level and bringing it to their leadership. And then their leadership's job is to kind of discern between the different architects that are bringing them things and what actually then does marry with the business, right? Because of course our architect's job is to go do cool, fun stuff. But we, at the end of the day, as leaders of the company, also have to marry that with the responsibility to the business. So I think it has kind of pivoted in the method that we're attacking it from. But at the end of the day, it's still a discussion about technology and business needs.
And I think there's a realization too that you never give away technologies. Once you adopt them, they're yours forever. Especially if you're in a company that's been around for 30, 40, 50, 100, 150 years, if it's still running and still bringing in money, you're probably not going to get rid of it. You're probably going to keep it. And so all of our technology acquisitions are accretive. We never give things up. And so the job of managing all of that technology kind of gets more and more difficult. And then at the same time, kind of, you're saying about how developers are picking up technologies and those kinds of things. The way that we're doing software architectures now with Kubernetes and Docker and those kinds of things, they have the ability to put those things in and then make them part of the application in a much less frictionful way than before, which is both good and bad. Good from the point of view of adopting technology, bad probably from governance in some sense. You want to have a little bit of control over that. But it's a lot smoother to adopt technologies now. But once you adopt them, you can never give them back.
And it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because we've been hearing a lot about mainframe in the DevOps space, and it's like mainframes are enjoying their renaissance right now, and it's
they never went away.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a whole generation of people who are just discovering the mainframes and the value of the mainframes, and I imagine that's kind of a prime example of being able to take a legacy technology and still finding value in there, and that's definitely something that the C-suite is interested in knowing about, and the technology that makes that happen. Would you say that that's something that the developers are coming up with? That's that more bottoms-up approach, or is that still more of the C-suite finding the value there?
Is the question about making legacy stuff continue to be relevant? Is that where you're coming from? I think it kind of depends. I think you've got developers who really want to do cool, new, fun stuff, right? So if it's their choice and you leave them to their own devices, they're going to go pick fun, new, sexy technology. And so I think it's our job as leaders to make sure that they understand that their responsibility is about the bottom line and not always just about implementing the coolest, sexiest technology, but that it can be equally as challenging and satisfying to go take where we are from a legacy standpoint and figure out how to make that useful, how to make it cost effective, how to transition it into the next generation. And in some manner, I think that's a bigger challenge and at times more rewarding than simply going out and implementing something new.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the really interesting complex cases that we get to work on in Electric Cloud involve, for example, you've got a mainframe on the back end, you've got an RDBMS, you've got a key value store, you've got an API gateway, you've got a mobile app. right? So this idea of bimodal IT, I think, is fiction, right? It's a simplification.
Yeah.
It's unimodal or multimodal. Well, pick one of the two, because all of those things have to get coordinated together in order to release that new feature. You got to make the schema change. You've got to add the stored procedures. You've got to do the right thing to the programs on the back end, and then plumb all the way through, and then get the app out through the App Store, and all of that has to happen before the app works. And that's a dance that's a little bit more complicated to choreograph than 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, where there was just one thing, the monolith or the green screen or those kinds of things. So more moving parts make it more challenging.
So do you think that there's maybe an education process that has to occur with the C-suite when we're talking about these new cool, new shiny new toys and whiz bangs?
Yeah, I think everywhere, really. I mean, although I will say, I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the last 18 months, in most meetings, before then it would be in the first 30 minutes of the meeting, it would be, well, let me explain to you what DevOps is and why it's cool, and you haven't heard about it yet, nor CD or CI or all these things, and that would be the first half hour of the conversation. That's no longer the case. Pretty much no matter who I speak to now, they at least know the word DevOps. They know generally what it's for. Now, do they know what it is in relation to CI or CD or Agile or Kanban? That's we still have to figure that out and paint that picture, I think, a little bit better. And you guys help out a lot, obviously. But more education is needed in general, And a lot of these things are not being taught in school yet, right? So either through the kind of post-secondary adult education, or even in the curriculums in the schools, these things have to start getting taught. So.
And on the flip side of that, I think we as developers need to be speaking more the language of the business, right? So we often find ourselves talking in terms of DevOps or why this stuff is really cool, but at the end of the day, when we're talking to those executives, they want to talk in dollars, return on investment, those sorts of things. I think some modern technologies are enabling that. So take cloud infrastructure, right? I can see what my infrastructure costs me on a daily basis, where in the past, servers and memory and everything, we joke about how that was free. Right. And so now if I wanted a new server or I wanted to add memory to that, I just filled out a form and I got it magically. Whereas now I can pull up and I can see exactly how much that's going to cost me every day. And that's a very different decision. And so we're thinking about that, and it helps us because we're changing our mindset too, which then helps us turn around and talk to the business in those terms.
Yeah.
So then, do you think that the technology decisions that are being made are now kind of being made more across the C-suite in general? So it's not just the CIO or the CTO, but it's also the CEO and maybe even some areas that traditionally have not been involved in the decision-making process.
In some places, it probably is. I'm not really sure whether that's a good thing or not, right? Because that's that isn't really the CEO's problem in a sense. And do you want the CEO of the car company to know the latest about the details of how we're going to lubricate this new engine? Like that. I don't know that level of detail needs to surface up there. If that's happening, maybe that's because something is wrong. But I think in the sense that software is such a disruptor, and a startup has the ability to come in and take out an established, generationally present company almost overnight. That is definitely the CEO's concern, right? So are we better or worse than our competitors when it comes to how we deliver software? Right, that's definitely going to be a CEO's concern, because software is so much of how we differentiate now compared to just 5 or 10 years ago. So from that perspective, yes. From the perspective of what technology, how do we do it, that I think still hopefully belongs to the CIO.
I would agree with that.
But if the conversation is a value conversation, what does this bring to the company? What will this do for me? In that respect, are they more involved in those conversations?
I think so. I mean, I think so. And a lot of these conversations will involve, if you're going to do a full-on digital DevOps transformation, that involves not just technology and so on, but that's HR, that's finance, that's how do we do personnel reviews, who reports to who, how do we organize? It is not just something that you do, you can't buy DevOps in a box. I mean, I would sell it to you if I could,
yeah.
right?
Somebody
But you
will try
can't.
at some point
Yeah,
too, I'm
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
100% agree with that
Yeah.
point, right? And I think a lot of companies probably start their transformation with development and operations,
Yeah.
but I think eventually if you don't branch into all those other areas,
Then you run into
then
roadblocks.
You
Yeah.
absolutely do,
Yeah.
because it takes everybody and it's changing not just the technologies but the processes that you're using
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And I think there, I've heard it said, I mean, every company is a technology company at this point. If our most senior leaders don't have at some level some understanding of what we're doing, then we're probably in trouble. As you said, they don't
Yeah.
need to necessarily know specific
The
technologies
right level of
or
abstraction.
or how we're implementing Agile or something like
Yeah.
that. But they absolutely should understand where are we versus our competitors
Totally.
with regards to implementing these different processes and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what haven't we talked about with technology for tech leaders that you think really should be something that I'm just too dumb to ask?
One thing I talked about in my talk today was metrics. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing, because that is, you can't control what you can't measure, as the old saying goes. And the focus, the focus of my talk was really think about metrics that are about outcomes that you want to achieve, right? And make sure that those metrics are in service of that outcome, and that the metric is actionable, that if you do something that metric changes, and that change in the metric has the corresponding outcome change that you want. So many of us don't do that, right? Because we use vanity metrics or shaming metrics or gaming metrics or those kinds of things. And metrics is difficult. And one of the things I've heard several times, and I repeat it today, and actually I had 2 or 3 people come up to me and talk about afterwards, is less is more when it comes to metrics. You don't want that dashboard with 400 different metrics. That's useless. That's noise, white noise, worse than white noise. You want 1, 2, or 3 key operational metrics, and they should probably change over time, right? If it's not like number of dollars coming in the door kind of metrics, then they should change, because why are you measuring something that's working, right? And if it's not working and you're measuring it and it's not getting better, then you got to change something else, right? So metrics should evolve over time as you find newer problems to measure and so on. And the kind of the vanity, big giant dashboards that we all have in our offices are sometimes useful, but a lot of times it's an exercise in just broadcasting noise, unfortunately. But it's possible to use metrics and do it in a good way. So.
It sounds like metrics is more of the business conversation rather than.
And that can be a business value conversation, right? Because it can be about how effective is the software. Is it meeting the needs? Is it making the customers happy? And that's a business value, kind of thing. Or it can be about the efficiency. How much money did we spend getting that release out the door? How many engineers built it? And all of those kinds of things. And then the cultural aspects of, did we burn people out, or are people leaving because we fried them out with 18-hour days for 6 months or 2 years or whatever? So it's a KPIs are something that CEOs want to know about. And, there's definitely good and bad ways to measure things.
Great.
And I think with those metrics too, it's important to level set, right? That we're never done DevOpsing.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to improve metrics, and then we're going to find new metrics to improve. And I think we often talk and focus on what can we fix, right? So celebrating the successes with those metrics.
Yep.
And then understanding that it really is a journey that, again, isn't a check the box or something that just is done.
Once you fix it and it's flatlined, you move it off to the second page, and it only comes up if it's an alert, and then you find some other problem to go after.
So realizing that DevOps is kind of an ongoing process, you're never done with it. Do you think CEOs by and large understand that, or do they think that they're paying lip service to that idea that it's ongoing, but they maybe in the back of their head they're thinking at some point we're gonna achieve DevOps and we're gonna be there?
I think the name itself, when you talk transformation to me indicates that at some point we're going to be transformed.
Exactly.
And
Sometimes
so
we're going to be the butterfly, not the larva.
Yeah. So I do think that a lot of them likely think that there is an end to it, where I think you'll just gradually continue to get better and better. I mean, obviously there are the unicorns that are out there, but for the rest of us, we'll continue looking at different things that we can tweak and improve. But again, it's always about return on investment, and you're going to have diminishing returns for some different things. It's not always going to make sense to invest in certain areas.
It's a continuous improvement game, so it's the improvement in the quality of the daily work that's more important than the quality of the daily work. and it's just iterate, and do it till you're bored, and then do something else.
Well, we could talk about this topic for probably all afternoon, but I think we're running out of time now. So Erica and Anders, both, thank you so much for having the conversation with me. I appreciate taking the time today.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.